Young man, do you want to succeed, to expand beyond your horizons? If you want to be free, then you must learn to master yourself, your thoughts, feelings, your body and spirit. Master your subjective consciousness. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction. The world outside of yourself is ruled by those who are not ruled by their base instincts. Young man, go forth into the world after this. Meditate, contemplate, then plan and execute an action towards success. Take a risk, break the rules, and be disciplined within self.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what draws behind the curtain, the face of evil lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Case Closed. Every Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The place to be, all-star panel, dealing with topical topics, ladies and gentlemen. So, we're going to get right into this. We are going to get right into this, ladies and gentlemen. And I just want to, this is something that was just kind of on the periphery, and I did not notice much of it until today, as a matter of fact. And as the title says here, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I want to start out like this, okay? And it's going to be like a basic true or false question here. Basic true or false question. Passports require you getting your economic situation together, right? True or false? Passports require you getting your economic house together so that you can basically exercise your options around better cultured and better trained people. Is that correct? Is that the main idea of this? And we'll get deeper into why the question is asked. But let's start with LAR and Man of Tomorrow, Game Changer, Kaizo. We'll wrap up with Dr. Thunder here. Passports require you getting your economic house together. That is the underlying theme here. After all, you can't participate without that, right? LAR, what are your thoughts?
Not necessarily, because what it's like 150 now, I think it went up. I think it's 120 now, it's like 150.
We still got to travel, LAR.
I mean, yeah, but the way people travel now, people are traveling on credit and saving up maybe a couple of months or paying in payment plans to go on trips. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they have or get it in all order. It's kind of the same as people saving up to buy an expensive piece of clothing now, I don't think they're I don't think people care as much about the going abroad as far as like learning other cultures than they do just going seeing some new stuff and partying. It's just depending on which city you is a glorified Miami, a glorified LA, a glorified, New York. So no, I don't think it is as much as that it as possibly in the past.
All right, man of tomorrow. Being able to exercise your options, getting your economic house in order. That's what this passport thing is about. True or false?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what it's about. Because you got to have your stuff together. You got to have like a clean background for the most part to actually be able to travel, and that's exactly what it's about. It's about not needing to. It's probably about a disciplinary piece too, because to save your money and get your stuff together and to save up money and do all that stuff, it is a discipline based thing, and it's all economics based. Like most of the passport movement is about withdrawing your actual resources from a bad situation and spending it on a one-to-one basis in a place where you can actually get a more return on your investment. So I do agree that is it's pretty much an economics-based thing. So
Okay. So game changer. Simple question there. The basis of this is economic, and there's gonna be a hierarchy involved with this here. Not a lot of people will be able to participate in this. In order to participate, you're gonna need to get your economic house in order. And then there's a lot of Let me not go a little further. Let me not go further there. What do you think about that, game changer?
Yeah, I do agree with LAR that the passport itself, you probably don't have to have your stuff together economically just for $150. However, the travel lifestyle that one wishes to live now, you do have to require that your ducks are in a row somewhat in order to do it comfortably and enjoy it well.
Yeah. Okay. So Kaiser, what are your thoughts about that?
Can you repeat the question?
The basis of the passport movement, if there is such a movement, is economic. The ability to exercise your options about around better culture, to better train people to get the outcome requires that you get your economic house in order. True or false?
Yeah, true. Without economics, first of all, you're aiming at the wrong thing. And if it's to basically reduce expenditure so that you can sort of build a business or some kind of plan that you can execute in the future, that's still all part of it. Now, if it involves women or relationships, that's an extra, but it shouldn't be a focus. Economics should should be the prioritized thing.
Okay, so I know no one else got a follow-up question there, but I just want to, what do you mean like it should be the priority? Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Priority?
Yeah. Okay. So, for example, let me, my girlfriend right now, she came over. She helped me, with some of my arrangement issues and disorders. That isn't something that a man should be focusing on. That should already be a granted, right? Having that kind of easiness. You should never be focusing on Keisha or, I don't know, the Nigerian equivalent, right? There's some things which should be sort of consequences. So economics, right? Focusing on making money, leaving money for your children or any other sort of people that rely on you in the future. That should always be the focus, because at the end of the day, when you're moving around as a so-called passport bro, it's not about you finding passport WHORES. If that's what you want, that's a consequence. What you're doing is you're leveraging the dollar market value for yourself and your skills. You're also leveraging the economics of whichever region you're sort of embroiled in for that time being. It's always economics. You're doing it. For example, the current president of prime minister of the UK is what? I believe it's a Kenyan Indian, right? And so is the secretary. It's a East African Indian. Again, in the UK, these people moved and found the best place and position that affected their lives positively. That's what being a passport person is. It's not about this other stuff. That's the other stuff is just icing on the cake if that's what you're looking for.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a question.
Well,
Go for it.
1 second here after Dr. Thunder gets his thoughts on this, and then we'll get your question real quick there, game changer. But so Dr. Thunder, okay, a man's purview, a man's domain, okay, is basically economic, right? It is basically getting your productivity together. It's basically going out there and conquering the base level of things, right? Building the fence around the city, getting the resources to flow into the city, and it be protected and such, so that the women and children can, do what they do, right? So at the end of the day, if we're talking about passport bros, then the economic question here is the basic one from which everything else would flow. So, just restating the question, true or false? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to have your economics together in order to be able to travel. There's, in large part, there's no such thing as a dusty passport bro. You know, of course, I'm sure there are some folks that have their passport and they're doing, stuff that maybe I don't condone doing. That's fine. I don't have to condone. Nobody has to condone. It's their right, their freedom to use their leverage in a way that they believe that benefits them. And it's interesting that Kaizo used the term passport person. I guess this is the PC version. Because actually, of the black community, the ones that have had their passport first and have been traveling like a mug has been our women. It's only been fairly recently that men, the black men, in large percentages, or a large enough percentage to constitute a movement, have even had their passports, right, to be able to travel. And then that gets into the whole, what is the purpose of traveling? And it seems to me that the men are most interested in either finding a traditional option to develop a family, or they could be following up on some business opportunities. They don't need to make as much money to have a better lifestyle. And I don't know all of these. I mean, what kind of idiot is not going to leverage what it is that they have in abundance to get the best deal that they can get? That's what you're supposed to do. And so this trying to shame people, out of exercising their option, based on the supposed dirty foot, women, which is, I think, profoundly racist. It's a racist assessment of the women in other parts of the world. And it is a highly colonialized racist framework to even characterize women from other parts of the world as being somehow lesser than, easy to take advantage of, and the rest of that. I do a show on Thursdays called Two Dads React, with a guy that I've been best friends with since I was in 5th grade. And he's got a big channel called God Rules. He's a white cat, but he's a 2-time passport bro. He's in his second marriage, actually. First didn't work out. It's not a guarantee, but he was citing many of the things that you hear folks talk about in the black manosphere with respect to not being able to find adequate mates. Way back when. White men have been doing this forever. And of the black community, black women did it first. And I think you can argue, based on the numbers, if it's the men or the women that are indulging in this supposed sex tourism, I think you'd have to argue that there's a more established pathway for the women. So why are they not using that argument against themselves?
Game changer, you had a question?
Yeah, but it lost context, so we can move on.
Gotcha. Okay, so Dr. Thunder, you mentioned the purpose of this, right? The purpose typically is to go exercise your options as an individual, right?
Right.
And it is for the people whom have the opportunity to exercise these options. Shout out to the super chat, that way I don't forget. Okay. Shout out to Dottie Gal them for the $10. It's just no words, just $10. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I know
Very
that's £10. That's like $12.5.
Dottie Gal them, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Okay, that's more than $10. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Individual options, individual leveraging things, okay? And there is, again, a basis whereby you, in order to leverage things, you need to build something, right? You need to build something that you can leverage. You have to become somebody of means, or somebody that has the ability to perhaps even work into that. Now, I promote a lot of globalization and globalism and stuff like that, because there's a lot of arbitrage involved. There's still, shall we say, places where there's still a great deal of upside market wise, right? The wild, wild west, the game is sewn up over here, right? But in terms of virgin land and opportunities, in terms of, well, where there's a whole lot more upside, you can go out there and get that. However, there is a lot of voyeurism going on. There's a lot of people just watching and using this as a way of getting back at Keisha. So the next question is this, okay? The passport bro thing is not a means of getting back at women, right? And this is a true or false again. And there's a lot of voyeurism going around, where even people that may not have their ish together at all, or don't even plan on traveling, or think that people who travel are weird, men that is, are using this whole thing to throw it back at the face of somebody else whom they have some kind of beef with. True or false, Mr. LAR?
I'm kind of on the fence on that one. It's not necessarily just a beef with women. I think at the basis of it is wanting to live in another country to get away from the stress of this country, and maybe get treated better in a different environment, or have a new environment, and have a new experience. I think sometimes people just take it as getting away from quote unquote Keisha, but that's part of it, because that's part of the people that, guys feel treat us poorly. So it's kind of weird, because I don't know I'm trying to word this properly. I think people have an issue with Black men in particular doing whatever it takes to get treated better. So whenever guys go in any direction, an option to find something better than what they're getting, it becomes opposition for everybody. So yeah, it's a get back thing, but it's more of a get two piece type of thing, in my opinion.
So primarily to get to peace. Okay. Now, man of tomorrow, passports are not about getting back at women. True or false? And is there an aspect of voyeurism where some people are using it? Either they travel and then they show stuff, or they're showing other people travel to stick it in the face of women whom perhaps they don't even want, or they're not the ideal women for them. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thought is, as soon as you start talking about women, they should flag your channel off YouTube. Period. You're not about to mess up our movement. This guy who's in this trouble, not part of our movement. He's part of his movement. No one is running up into news media and all these relationship shows and getting this stuff, trying to draw a whole bunch of attention to yourself. Now, when you travel, you're supposed to draw at least attention to yourself as possible. I'm a military guy, ex-military. I've been traveling since I was 18 years old. My first station was Germany, and I've been traveling ever since. Never have you seen me put a picture up of my wife, my surroundings, nothing. Why? That's none of anybody's business. But in this actual culture, where people want to look at it as they have to stun on the next man because of what he or she has access to, they're trying to hijack the movement and turn it into something else. When there's plenty of State Department people who work overseas, there's plenty of people who work for the United States military, people who work for the FBI, the CIA, tons of government organizations, people who play sports, people who are foreign exchange students, none of these people have quit their lives to go troll women overseas because they have a passport. And that is not part of what we're about. We are a peaceful movement. We don't have a problem with women here in the United States. When you get your stuff together, it's supposed to bring you a depth and level of peace. You ain't supposed to be consistently at war with anybody. Look, if you found something that's great, you're supposed to keep it a secret. Why would you broadcast your secret to the entire world so that way everybody can come over there? Look at what happened to Sasua and all these places. So what I'm saying is the people who want to go over there and do that type of stuff, they need to be as separate personnel as us, because I don't want to be defined by the least people who are out doing things that nobody actually does within the group. This is a very minority-based thing, as with everything. When you go and get in trouble, your ass is only the one who's showing up to court for that. No one else is showing up for court for that. So we just need to separate the distinctions between one individual who's very young and very inexperienced by this thing, and people who've been doing this stuff since World War II, Vietnam War, Korean War, Gulf War, didn't come back after the Iraq and Afghanistan conflict. We can't castigate every single person who has a passport because this guy's acting a fool. That's all I got to say.
All right. Game changer. Okay. Passports are not about getting back at women. It's not a political, or shall we say, it's not a media tool for you to turn back and throw it at Keisha's face. What do you say about that? True or false?
Well, I think for some men, it is partly about getting back at Keisha. But I think that that's for very few men. Kind of like when you start a new job, there is going to be a part of you that's like, yeah, this is stick it to, Burger King, or, the jerks that wherever I worked at before, Walmart. I think part of it is that. And MOT, I think there's something going on in the background. I think part of it is that, but I think that even with those people, it changes almost immediately once they find comfort in their new life. And just like a person finding comfort in a new job, the more and more they think less of their previous job. I think that that's what's going on here. Now, as far as the portion that you mentioned when you were talking about the people who are simply mad at Keisha and they are weaponizing passport bros, even though they are not passport bros themselves, meaning that they don't live that lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, they're using it to attack Keisha. Did I understand that part of the question correctly?
Yeah, I mean, because you know how it is. You start talking about certain topics, especially if there's women involved, and that's when you have a drove of viewers and shares and restreams, and there's just a lot of people. These people are not traveling. These people don't have jobs that they could travel. They're not living international lifestyles, but they're just using this. What are your thoughts about that? Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Right, exactly. Yes, I do feel that those people exist. They probably aren't as vocal as the passport bros themselves on that particular subject, but I do know that those people exist, and it is perfectly natural considering the circumstances. Right now in the West, there is an overabundance of qualified and willing husbands, and there is a underabundance of qualified and willing wives. And once they see something that's happening, like a large exodus of, or maybe not large, but an exodus of men, of qualified men looking for wives elsewhere, this does balance the scale for the remaining men.
All you need is 10%.
Yeah. So, I mean, it does balance the scale for the remaining men. And I think that they are mentioning that they're telling the women to be prepared for the women here, because they're here to be prepared for the men here to be better women.
Okay, we'll get to the better women argument, because and let me drop something down regarding that better women argument. If I was a woman that had government protection and infinite DMs with all kinds of D whatever, someone's gonna clip that out and say, anyways, if I had that, I don't see. I mean, it's people respond to incentives. It's almost impossible for me to want to change, but we'll get to that. We'll get to what kind of leverage you actually do have. Now, Kaizo, your thoughts regarding getting back to Keisha. I guess we know what you're going to say, because you already said that primarily this thing is not something you should be thinking about. That it should not be, it's the the little sprinkle on top of the cherry, on top of the icing on the cake. But what are your thoughts with regards to the voyeurism? Game Changer said that it's natural, and yes, it is natural. These particular insects are going to get attracted to a certain kind of light. So That's for sure. But what are your thoughts about that?
Okay, so if you have a channel, you're getting back Keisha for, let's say, clout, money, donations. Hey, that's great. You're creating content for people who want to live vicariously through you, right? So fine. However, if your whole focus is getting on Keisha, then obviously it means you haven't sort of, I don't like using the word heal, but you haven't moved on from certain aspects, childish, immaturity, and all that kind of stuff, which means uh, some immature behavior might actually lead you into trouble when you're trying to sort of move in this new space, because you might not really understand the fundamentals of how to succeed in a globalist economy. So for example, in my case, right, I'll give my context here, right? When I was in the UK, the only girls that dated me that were black were it was Somali women and one Nigerian woman and many Ghanaian women. That's it. So my preference was for that, right? So anyone else, wasn't really into them, right, for various different reasons. So am I going to go around getting back at these people? Of course not. It doesn't mean anything to me. But at the same time, I'm just here looking at the mindset. If your mindset is, again, immature, you haven't grown up, you haven't, overcome whatever that thing is, you might end up in similar troubles even abroad. What will happen to you is most likely get scammed because you thought there was something wrong with Keisha when actually there was something wrong with you. So what will happen then? You're going to go abroad, you're going to go overseas, and in places like, let's say, third world countries like Colombia and places in Africa, specifically, let me use Kenya as an example. Men are not the predators for the most part. It's women. And these women, what will they do is they'll find you in a club, very beautiful young women, they'll put drugs in your drinks, etc., and they'll rob you blind. So my point is, if your focus is not on getting the money, getting secure, stable, and sober, I think unfortunately something similarly Keisha like will happen to you regardless.
Keisha, like, that's a good shout out, Dr. Thunder. Getting back
Cardi
at
B
women.
like.
Getting back at women, okay, and using this and the voyeurism along with that. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is interesting. So, to MOT's point about not drawing attention to yourself, I have a passport. I guess I don't really call myself a passport bro. I am married, but the reason I have a passport is to take advantage of opportunities abroad. I tour, I tour in a number of bands, and so the opportunities, the high paying opportunities and exposure opportunities that avails, that's why I have the passport. Now, I don't really publicize that except for amongst folks that could hire me for a gig, right? I think what started getting this whole movement, people talking about it, was you had a number of channels that were actually attempting to provide information for men to solve a common issue. And then Keisha started responding to it on TikTok. Right? And though this message was never about women, it was a message from men to men about a way to solve a common issue. What spread it around and caused it to grow to the extent that it did, again, was because women were talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's other things that occurred that could have been done differently, and probably some decisions that were made by some of the men that exacerbated this. But that's actually why people started talking about it more, is because the women started talking about it. Now, I think it's one of the reasons why there was a great likelihood that this was going to start proliferating the way that it has, is because of the nature of the way that we communicate and we disseminate information, and we find people that have like interests. It tends to be online. It tends to be through social media. it tends to be on open platforms because the people that are talking on particular topics want their message to be, possible to locate, So I think that the pandemic certainly had a massive impact on that. A lot more folks with more time on their hands sitting at home and investigating on a number of topics. So yeah, it's an interesting sort of issue. I've had a passport for a long time, but like I said, I have never really used my passport for the purpose of dating. Now, have I interacted with women when I was abroad? Of course I have. But that was never the goal. So yeah, it's an interesting sort of problem that we have now.
All right. So speaking of quote unquote the problem, and I'm going to ask MOT this, then we'll get back to LAR, rotate again. But basically, Doug has this question here, like, how do you prevent men with other motives from bringing attention to the passport bros, blah, blah, blah. And because MOT talked about a movement, not putting words in his mouth, or a group, it may be or may not be official. For example, I mean, things like this always get out of hand when you start something. I'm not making it analogous to the Proud Boys, but something similar happened with the Proud Boys, where this guy just started something called the Proud Boys, and then there's always the idiots always take it, and then yes, you may have had some racism in your heart when you started the Proud Boys, but you didn't want it to be stupid racism, and all of a sudden now it's stupid racism, and it expanded and metastasizes to go all over the place. So yes, you want male agency, you want to go out there, but once you give it a name, how do you stop other people? How do you do the control thing, MOT? Because you mentioned this group, there's an in-group, there's an out-group, or you just pretty much just ignore it and just do what you're doing.
No, it's very easy. Destroy the person that's actually doing all this stuff. If this is an Auston Holleman problem that brought all this attention to our group, he should be destroyed over it. And only him. Because he's the only one going over there acting a fool. There ain't nobody else with this movement who quit their entire life to go over there and do exactly what he's doing. This is an Auston Holleman problem. It should stay an Auston Holleman problem. We should aim all of your actual criticism toward that guy, not us. Because everybody else knows how to pay attention and do things properly. This guy cannot possibly stop the attention train that he's on. His life is based on the attention that he gets from this stuff. And I think that he should go down for it, alone, by himself. No one else. Like, a lot of these people wanted to fight the gender war. Kevin Samuels had died. A lot of people sitting around wanted to find another way to fight the gender war. That's how all this stuff came to the passport movement. Because all of these, we've been here for 5 or 6 years. Really no interactions, no really negative press. One clout chaser comes around with this, just now realizing something at 23, and now the whole movement's on fire and possibly destroyed. I'm like, look, I agree with you, but take this stuff to the person that is actually doing it. Anybody trolling women, don't come over here with me. I don't want none of that heat over here with me. If you start pointing something at me, I'm going to start pointing something back, and I'm not going to miss. So what I'm saying is, if there is a specific problem that people have with the trolling of women, that is separate from the passport movement. You're supposed to be quiet and bring more peace to your life when you actually go somewhere. Can you stop it? No. It's kind of like, like Muslims after 9/11. There's a difference between Sunni and Shia and other type of Muslims and the people who did 9/11. Those people came out and distanced themselves. Did some people want to not distance themselves from it? Yes. But at the end of the day, you got to hold the people directly responsible. Who's responsible for bringing all this heat out here? There's too many people clout chasing out here who just want a piece of the attention. A lot of these neglected ass, sorry ass men out here want the attention without the work associated with doing the proper work to get the attention. Passport Bros is just an easy way to fight the gender war off of a movement that they did not build and they destroyed, just like the Black Manosphere. Thank you.
Hey, MOT, can I follow up some? I said something about Keisha getting on TikTok and spreading the word, and that having to do a great deal to do with why the sort of general public even
I don't care what women
has any
think.
idea.
I
Well,
don't
no,
care
I
what women think.
know.
They can talk and run their mouth all they want to.
Well, no, I okay. I mean, and if the movement is about men, I don't know that what women have to say matters. I agree with that, but my point is, it seems like a great deal of why the Passport Bro movement has actually started to being written about, even prior to Auston, is actually because of women finding certain content and then talking about it. Do you think that it's true that because women have started talking about it, that that's had some sort of impact on the proliferation of the messaging?
Correct. But it's called yellow journalism. When you start going out and doing stories and hit pieces about things without properly researching the people who's been doing the content over it, you're doing it for yourself. You're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it to try to find some type of understanding. You're doing it as a hit piece on an actual movement. So I don't worry about these stories, and I don't worry about any of that stuff, because if they wanted background, they would have contacted and did their research on the actual movement. These hit pieces are not actual information pieces. They're actually disinformation pieces. And what you do to disinformation, you don't respond to it. I don't care what they think. The whole movement was about you being happy, and the people who could not actually benefit off infinite choice, they were the ones going to be the first ones complaining. That's where we should have left it. But see, a lot of people cannot stay away from women complaining about stuff, and they got to re-engage in the gender war. So I'm just saying, look, at the end of the day, these people are doing hit pieces on things. They're not trying to find out the actual reason behind it. There's data and statistics, and there's people that they can talk to. But when you don't do that and you just do these hit pieces, I don't respond to hit pieces. I can defend myself in the conversation if they wanted to have a conversation with me. But see, they write these pieces because they don't want to have a conversation with you. This is why we got our passports and left, because we don't want to have a conversation on this level with these individuals here. That's the problem.
So let me then ask LAR, just kind of like following with this question here. True or false, right? The minute you have to explain yourself, you've already taken a wrong turn, okay? And you may understand why I'm asking this here at this point, LAR, right? It's like, okay, you can ignore what the hell people are saying, which, you know, MOT is called yellow journalism. They're not asking you, you're not talking to them, it doesn't matter. But the minute you find yourself in a situation where you're not explaining yourself, first of all, you look weak, right? Just as a man sitting there having to explain your choices, that's, that just makes my skin crawl. And it's a sign that you've made a wrong turn somewhere. That's a statement. True or false, LAR?
In this case, I think it's false, because sometimes people poke at you to get a response so they can finally figure out to poke holes into your theory. So sometimes when people bombard you with stuff, you're responding to what they're doing, and then you're weak for responding. It's like, well, why did you bring all this stuff to me? But that comes off after the fact. With this situation, from what I've seen, I could be missing a few things. All of this kind of blew up when he kind of interviewed I don't know if she was white or Latina, whatever, but white-ish kind of girl, and asked questions like, would you kiss me on the first date? Would you sleep with me on the first night type stuff? And then everything went haywire. And to me, the problem overall with this that is created, because I've seen guys do way worse than that, way worse. But the problem seems that, yes, Auston Holleman is younger man, but it looks like they don't want a person like him. And I ain't talking about the brothers in the Passport Bros. I'm just talking about like all the opposition he's getting. I don't think people want a guy like him to be a recognizable face and a type of black man that will travel, even if it's for looking for a wife, sex tourism, or even business, because I think they stereotype guys that travel to be older, unattractive. and now you got somebody who the women who is younger and the women would consider attractive going abroad, and I think that's a thing that has set off landmines, and I think it did. So
Okay,
people,
well, I got a follow-up question.
run it. Say that again.
Go ahead.
I have a follow-up question when you're done with that, because I have a question about that specific line of thinking.
Okay,
But
because
go ahead, sir.
well, finish up, LAR.
Well, ultimately, that's why, like, when the first question about the questioning somebody, I think that becomes the reason why you bombard somebody, because you don't want them to do a certain thing, so you attack them in a certain way to break them down in a certain way to, get rid of them, so something like that might not ever happen again.
So, in addition to your question, MOT, just a quick reaction to this statement that if you ever find yourself in a position where you're having to explain yourself, and this is an unforced error, right? It's not like, you got subpoenaed. Yeah, that happens. And when that happens, yeah, that is also a bad thing, right? Whenever you're explaining yourself, it's typically not a good thing. So just your reaction to that, and then your question.
All right, my reaction is yes. The whole reason why a movement was created is so that way their choices and their opinions didn't matter. That's why you went off and do your own thing, because their choices don't matter. Like, the whole reason the movement was created is to give people additional options on top of the options that they have here. But the moment you start explaining why you use Charmin over Bounty to people who you don't know, that sounds crazy. Because you shouldn't need to be explaining your choices and options to anybody. That's why you go off and do your own thing. And with LAR, I mean, I think there's something a little bit more sinister than your actual point. I think that most of this dating market here was predicated upon men being unhappy while they stay here and wait their actual chance. So with men actually having the option to go somewhere else, however that actual option comes out, it's unfortunate that it comes out like this, that sets off alarm bells. And this is why you see most of the videos from very, very, very unattractive women, because they can't compete in a system to where men are actually going to be happier with far more behavioral and traditional type women versus not. I mean, so I guess you are right, but there's a lot more sinister going on beneath that. This is why I say don't respond to them at all. I want to leave the Leslie Jones of the world actually complaining about men leaving and not saying anything back. That's a better response rather than trying to get into the woods, into the weeds with these actual women that can destroy your platform quite easily. Only thing you have to do is mind your own business and move along. Like, you got to understand that some fights you need to wage and some fights you don't. But this guy has to wage this fight this way because his economic dependence is dependent on it versus all these other reasons. This is why I'm against kind of what's going on, because bringing the actual attention to a travel-based movement and a male agency-based thing should not be brought up while this guy's screwing up. Like, we had enough things to worry about as it is. We don't need one guy who's financially dependent on the attention he receives from trolling these actual individuals to actually be the voice of our actual group and what we're actually doing.
LAR response?
I think sometimes people pick a fight with you, and that is your choice whether you to respond or not. So, the fight that's coming the Passport Bros way is not necessarily, even Auston Holleman, it's not a fight that they actually just were going outwardly asking for. Somebody got upset because, oh, I might be missing out. So I hate the fact that you got options. So let me do a hit piece. It's one of those things where it's a catch-22. Because even if you ignore them, that doesn't mean that they're not going to make a hit piece. Even if you're low key, that doesn't mean they're not going to make a hit piece. I think that the issue is not wanting people to exercise the options in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I don't think in some ways, I don't think it matters whether you're low key or high key. When people feel like they're missing out, it's going to be an attack.
Okay. I think regarding that matter, all the chips are on the table there. Now, game changer, a few things have been mentioned here, right? One of which has to do with, is it tactically foolish to mix male agency and bickering over the gender war, right? And to kind of crystallize that is this point of the minute you have to explain yourself, you already on the back foot as the English like to say. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, in this particular situation, he is being attacked and he has to defend himself against the standing explanation. Basically, the woman took the information and she deliberately mistranslated and misinterpreted it. So, in order to save his name, he has to say that. Now, of course, there's always going to be this whole backlash, like I am not the thing that you are accusing me of, but you're put in a bind when somebody makes a false accusation of that. You can deny the false accusation, which puts you on the defensive, or you can ignore it, and then the accusation will remain the loudest and standing voice at the time. So it's almost a lose-lose, and it depends on the individual's tactics. The type of tactician the individual is in order to deal with that particular situation. Austin is very young, and he was posed with a situation that he probably hasn't experienced in life before. So I didn't expect the best, but he did better than I actually expected.
Okay, so in the circumstances, having gone on there, he held himself well, having gone on there. But perhaps being older, one would understand that most battles you don't have to fight. And you did mention, yes, that depends on your tactics. I tend to lean on not fighting battles at all. So Kaizo, Kaizo, you know this about me a lot. Like when I get trolled, real life, business, whatever, my tactic is just to ignore it. 99% of the time it goes away. Okay. Because to be honest, anyways, I'm not going to get into my whole theory about that. But what are your thoughts on this? True or false? When you have to explain yourself, you have already taken the wrong turn somewhere. There's something you did a couple of steps back or one step back that you should not have done. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I don't want to become too, Kaizoran level here, but it depends on your personality, right? There's some people who can just ignore things. They don't need to explain things because at the end of the day, right, the flow, the way they do business, their personality, everything, charisma and character is all out there. So even if they don't explain things away, the things will just go away. And those kinds of characters who then either get themselves in trouble by saying things which, even in their own logic and own reasoning, they would judge themselves, right? Or so you have to choose which path you're a part of, right? Are you going to be the kind of people who, let's say, you judge others? So when you're judged in that same light, it affects you because let's say the audience that you build are of that caliber, or you're kind of person who just does your own thing. You don't care so much about being judged, especially if you know you are not really breaking certain rules, laws that let's say you value, etc. So yes, you're already doing something wrong if you have to explain yourself. Again, depends on whether you are going against your own rules, or you're basically built an audience who you have utilized it the same rules of judging others, basically.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Game Changer.
Was Johnny Depp doing something wrong?
When?
With the accusations that his ex-wife made towards him. I mean, he found himself in a position where he had to explain himself, right?
Oh,
I can
well,
answer
he was dealing with her in the
I
first
can answer
place.
that.
That was what he did wrong.
Okay,
Go ahead.
But what Johnny Depp didn't do is he did not immediately take her to court. He waited till the consequences happened, and then he took her to court after he received the consequences. So once you go into a situation like that, you got to hold people legally to account, because it really pretty much destroyed his career based off of accusations. And that court case should have been filed right away. It's kind of like, I don't like the guy, but Donald Trump does it right. Somebody makes an accusation against him, immediately file it in court. Immediately fire. Make them back down immediately.
So Austin's response was an immediate one. I'm just saying that it's not always the best tactic. That's why I say it depends on the individual's assessment of the situation, and perhaps you need a counsel before moving forward in this situation. But it's hard to say which one is right or wrong, because a lot of men remain silent and their name gets smeared, indefinitely without coming out. Yeah, without coming out and saying, wait, hey, shout out to Kobe Bryant, like, hey, this didn't happen. People have gotten their names smeared just ridiculously, in the case of Bill Cosby, all the way to prison, just because sometimes they just felt it was better to remain silent.
Yeah, I see your point,
Yeah.
man. I can see, man. That's a good point that I didn't even imagine. But it's kind of like the unforced error, but still, like me being in that situation, I don't know what I would have did either way. But it's everything else that's leading up to that. That's what I'm judging, not the actual issue itself, but everything leading up to that and after that is what I'm actually judging. Because moving in silence and being a little bit more careful can really stop you from even being in those type of circumstances. But not doing that really opens you up to those type of trouble. So I can see, man, you do make a great point there.
Thank you. And like I say, it's a lose lose. It's a tough decision. Let's put it like that. It's a tough decision.
Tough decision indeed. And Dr. Thunder, I'm reading your mind there, because you are, and the way it's posed is saying that the question that is, right, the way the question is posed is saying that there's something that went wrong. In the Johnny Depp case, you picked the crazy woman, right? If you ever get yourself in that situation, there's some, and this is more of an introspective point of view. You got to look back and be like, okay, how did I end up here? Where I'm having to explain myself, right? So again, it might be you chose the wrong business partner, XYZ, right? But you can react to that in addition to what else you want to react to. But the basic point is, true or false, if you're having to explain yourself, you need to look back and see, well, that you number one, tactically, you're not in the best position. It's not a position of power when you're explaining, right? I mean, someone has already kind of got you in the corner, and there's probably something that you made a wrong move somewhere, probably.
Right. Yeah, it's funny with the Johnny Depp illustration. If he had gotten his passport in the first place, he would have avoided. Yeah.
Trump is a passport
bros. So, but yeah, I mean, largely, if you're in the corner and are being forced to have to defend yourself, as it were, that is inherently problematic. So you want to try to, as much as possible, navigate in such a way that eliminates these sorts of issues, that eliminates these kind of issues. Auston found himself in a certain kind of situation. Perhaps if he had been counseled by older folks that had been there, done that, and maybe made some mistakes themselves, so he wouldn't have to make that kind of mistake, that kind of public, loud mistake in the sort of climate that we're in right now, then perhaps, would have been a different sort of scenario. But unfortunately, in large part, we have bought into this idea that experience is the best teacher. And no, experience is not the best teacher. Experience is largely inefficient because it forces you to pay for the consequences and for the expense of education, right? Whereas wisdom, is this idea of learning from other folks' mistakes. That's a better teacher. And, I always say to that answer, experience, or to that question, experience is not the best teacher. Teachers are the best teachers. But you just have to find the right people to teach you. So that is a challenge, and which is large part why most folks end up making certain kind of mistakes, because perhaps they can't find the right teachers. But anyhow, yeah, I mean, if you're in a situation where you have to explain yourself, that's inherently problematic because you're being cornered as opposed to leading the charge. And it also means that you've done something to put yourself in that circumstance. Someone has to take responsibility for that. It doesn't matter if you can point at somebody else or not. It's still your circumstance. So you have to figure out how to limit those sorts of issues.
Nice. Thanks for the pedagogical point there about teachers.
Get your passport. Get your passport. What I'm saying is get your passport, and then you won't have to deal with this.
So I said I was going to bring this up at some point, which is the idea of like I think Game Changer brought it up, the idea that if you show X, hey, look, there's competition over here, that you could get the home stock, the home inventory to change their behavior. But first, shout out to the super chat. If you don't mind reading that, Dr. Thunder, or giving us a little sound effect.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks for today's show topic.
Thank you. $5 super chat. Thank you very much for that. Now, so with regards to changing, right? I'm saying, look, okay, the counter to that, or at least, just the thesis that we're going to look at, is given the actual material conditions of power and government protection and DMs, including, no matter how, I believe MOT referred to some ugly women or something like that. Even the ugly women got DMs.
Very, very unattractive.
She said very. Oh, I didn't. Okay, very unattractive. He said,
very,
even
very.
them
I think he said very twice.
can find something. Okay. Now, in that situation, why would they back down? Now I'm not gonna. I don't know what the backing down would look like. I don't know what the submission looks like. I don't know any of that. But it seems like this is a great position. It seems like anything from here would be a loss, especially to a particular breed of human or person that is not really into looking at things from a long and logical perspective, from the long view, looking at all the whole thing, prioritizing the long picture. Why would you give up all this stuff, even if, because there's always going to be a cohort, so continues the thesis, it's always going to be a cohort that is still here serving them, if you will, and the government is not going to back out with their protection and such. But LAR, we'll start with LAR, we'll go MOT and Game Changer. But you know what? Let me just ask you first, Game Changer, right? And then we'll go the other way around. What are your thoughts about what I just said? They would never give up their power. What could be, why bother?
Okay, fair point. I think that the people who are speaking to that particular effect, so as it relates to passport bros, are saying, you now have less penis in your inbox, so to speak. So they're speaking to that effect, which really, is a dent in the large thing. But we gotta think about how women think versus how men think. Men count the number of women who are interested in them. Women count women count the number of men who are not. And I do think that it does have a psychological effect on them. And also, women just don't like to hear the fact that they have an inferior vagina. It's kind of like if you open a restaurant and people are going across town to eat the same type of food that you eat. Even though you have enough customers to stay in business in your own neighborhood, that will never change. It does do something to them psychologically. So I think that the people who are trying to get their goat just for the sake of getting it, they're succeeding in that regard. And also there is a balance that's going on. You see, there's if you put women into three categories, women who take long-term relationships seriously, that's being the first category. The second, the ones who don't take long-term relationships seriously and never will, would be the second category, like Tracy Ellis Ross would be in that cohort. And then there are the ones that procrastinate in doing so. They would take relationships seriously, but because of the marketplace, they don't have a sense of urgency. Because very few live in the first category, very few women are in the first category, the imbalance is creating the cascade that puts women in the second and third categories. The third category, which is the ones that procrastinate, or they don't have a sense of urgency because there's a large cohort of men. I do think that people are looking for a paradigm shift. The men are looking for a paradigm shift, which is why there's large encouragement for, even if they don't do it themselves, for men to not date in this disfavorable market. Hoping that the market will change, the supply and demand ratio will change, and then things will be favorable for them individually. They're hoping for that. They're hoping for that, and they're encouraging that in order to shift in that way. Will it be successful? Who knows? However, it will be successful for the ones who no longer continue to participate in that marketplace. That's for sure.
Gotcha. Now let me staying here with Game Changer here. I just want to say a couple of things here. Hopefully it's not too layered, and I just want you to kind of respond to it. And I like the way you kind of differentiated between the different kinds of women, because I tend to think that the psychological aspect that you said, yes, they will be psychologically affected. However, it's not going to be enough for them to actually change the behavior. And it may be just one of the categories of women, not all of them, right? But that perhaps the numbers are such that this particular category of women is overrepresented in this market, because after all, and this is the second point, the this is about training. Okay, it's not a chess match where somebody, it's not a logic game. It's not a code that you're writing, Game Changer. This is about training of the women. And when they're not trained in a certain way, they may have, pangs of conscience, or their heart may tell them, oh, I wish I could have X, when after the wall and such. But my contention is that if you rewind time and give them a start over again, they'll still end up in the same situation. They'll still take advantage of the things that they took advantage of because it's just, that's the nature of the beast. Just a quick reaction to that, and then we'll go to LAR.
I think that is very closely analogous to programming, in the sense that these women are programmed to be this way. They're programmed to go against their primary nature and behave in a way that's advantageous to people who sell luxury goods, basically the oligarchs of society. I don't think that that if the same women, if Keisha was raised under different circumstances, meaning that she was programmed different, and history have shown that she would behave a lot different. So I will say that they are being programmed. I think what a lot of brothers are attempting to do, and it may be futile, and in many cases I do agree, especially for the women in the second category that I described. But I do feel that a lot of brothers are trying to reprogram something that has been programmed since birth to behave in a certain way. Programmed through television, programmed through every form of entertainment that exists, in order to be the obnoxious woman that we have come to know and dislove.
All right. And shout out to the Peso Man in the chat. This is a closed panel at this point, unfortunately. If you don't mind dropping your email, right, we check you out and then include you in the initial links that are sent out and whatnot. But it's not an open panel, if you will. Shout out to Doug for kind of giving that explanation there. No shade, just the structure. Now, Mr. LAR, right? Women giving up their infinite bag of D's, giving up their government protection and all these kinds of things, or taking that government stuff and then coming to share it with you. Let me come share my stuff with you, Mr. LAR. Well, will that ain't happening? Is true or false?
Not happening. Using an analogy like of the other question you asked, to the Game Changer, as far as the power of it is concerned, power has become obsolete because you can't strong arm somebody's choice now. So even if you can, quote unquote, shame somebody or blackball them, they don't necessarily have to choose the direction that you're powerful in to get crushed. They can go in a different direction. So at this point, I think what you're seeing is a lot of people having meltdowns because people aren't choosing to play in their power game. And, now what are you going to do? So even the option of maybe I'll share my benefits with you. Maybe I just don't want to, maybe I'll go get benefits from in a different area. Maybe your benefits don't actually benefit me more than the benefits over here. So now what? So I think at the end of the day, you're going to see, you're seeing a spoiled society who's been entitled in different groups, privileged, not being able to exude their power over other people now. And what are they without that quote unquote powerful position now? You start seeing people just being whiny brats. So
Mm-hmm.
No matter how you slice it, you know, we will actually see if the cream rises to the top at this point because of the choice.
Hey, one of the mods, get rid of the peso man. Get him out of there.
He's on
I
that
guess
stuff again.
Get him out of there.
Okay, so
I just let me
can I give
comment.
context on the
Yeah,
peso man?
let me
Go
say
ahead.
something real quick. Because you're not invited on the panel is no indication that the panel is an echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
it.
you'll get a chance to explain whatever the hell you're going to explain, Kaiser. But MOT, simple question there. Women are not going to give up their power, true or false? Perhaps some people who want to use different kinds of arrows, pull different kinds of arrows from the quiver, including, let's say now, the passport bro arrow, in order to engage the gender war, may have the best, best case scenario. Putting them in the best light will be though they're trying to, save some people. Okay, they're trying to turn some people, make them see the light. And I'm saying that, hey, the incentives are such, the material, real incentives are such, because you're talking about creatures of flesh and blood, right? And we respond to these material incentives, make it such that they're just not gonna. Why would they give up all this power and infinite dicks? What do you say?
I don't expect them to give up that type of power. If I was in their position, I don't think I would give up that type of power. My power of choice right now, I'm not surrendering that so somebody else can be able to benefit off of that. Listen, every action have a equal and opposite reaction once the actual circumstances present themselves. These people did not have to compete for what they got. Now they have to compete for what's left over. I understand their depth of loss in that scenario. But then again, nobody cares about the men who are humiliated by other men and women within the same society along the same lines. So at this point, if we had definite silence towards men's actual response, we should have definite silence towards the women's lack of response. I think it's an equal thing. And once people start beating this gender war drum, you get them out of here, both sides. But I want to keep the women complaining because they're the ones who missed out. I don't understand why the men are complaining because that means that you get more access to what you claim you want. So I'm okay with the women actually complaining. They're the ones who's losing something here. Their complaints make total sense. And the actual people who are complaining makes even more sense because those people are not competitive when compared to other people. But now when you have mama's boys who jump in and try to call themselves defending women who didn't even ask for their help, that's a whole new level of effery right there. But I'm just saying, look, if we all did what we were supposed to do, we would all be at the place that we're currently are at. Okay? No one is rescuing this concept at the expense of other people. You have to ask yourself, who are you willing to sacrifice to keep this stuff going? And at that point, no one wants to be the sacrifice, but everybody was okay with people being sacrificed, ED, over the past 50 or 60 years. I think it's a fitting end. I think it is an exemplary punishment that they've earned, and I want nothing to do with it because I don't want the actual thing to go from them suffering the consequences based on their choice and lack thereof to me complaining about them. You don't allow them to get back on the field with a tangible argument because they can destroy your platform with their cries louder than us not being able to get what we want to over the past 50 years. That's why I want people to not engage in this gender war conversation and dynamic. Let the personnel who cannot benefit
Hold
from
on,
infinite choice
MOT.
keep letting them speak. Go ahead, sir.
Question. Just were you serious when you said you don't know why the guys are attacking it that way?
No. Oh, okay. Well, let me. Oh, okay. So I'll better phrase it, and you tell me whether or not that you got the definition because I think I explained it wrong. I don't understand the guys who come out and complain on the behalf of women about men leaving.
Right.
Because here's the thing: if these women are your actual choice, you get more access to choices than men are leaving. What are you complaining
Can I
about?
Oh
can I
no,
chime in?
I was just making sure. So if you
Okay.
don't mind, let's say you're a builder, right?
Yeah.
So let's just say either I'm Pookie or Ray Ray, I'm a loser, right? I can't afford for you to go away because you are actually the golden goose holding me and her together. That's why they're complaining. I need your work. I don't. If you leave, she's gonna look at me to build. That's not what I'm here for. You see what I'm saying?
Hey, I get you. Like I said, this is an exemplary punishment that both sides of this actual equation that have created and that is going to suffer. You have to lead them to it. You cannot listen. If they're setting their own house on fire, the last thing you need to do is come with the fire department. You come with gallons of kerosene and just sit them
Yeah.
there, label them
Can
water,
I
and leave.
can I chime in there a little bit? Because I have some knowledge on an example of a peso man. So I have the videos on my channel. I did some reviews on his videos before he took some of them down. But peso man was the original passport hoe. He used to go to different countries, specifically in this case Uganda. He used to show off women like, oh, this one here has got big booty, and yeah, it's all on my channel. I did a review on his channel before he did this 260 change, and now pandering to women again. Why? Because now he's getting super chats from them. So that's the full change. So someone like him is a grifter because, again, I said he was the original passport bro before, it was, anything else other than that. All the videos are on my channel. I've done reviews on him. And what I noticed is like since last year, he changed his whole agenda, started coming for Kevin Samuels and, the other guy, what's his name? O'Shea Duke Jackson, etc. But the point is, this man was literally showing his channel. The videos are all over the internet and on my channel as well. Come to this country. The women are like this, more of the sexualization actually of women, and also abusing the locals and beating them up, etc. So
Yeah, he's
yeah,
a lunatic.
right, exactly. So that's what I'm trying to say. So there is a subsection of grifters in this space who are doing it simply to get super chats, notoriety, and it's nothing because they're pandering to women in a sort of like mental sense, but really just for the clout that goes on with it.
Well, yeah. Two things. I do want to say, and I was going to save this to tell the two of you. I conduct for Thunder in the background, but yeah, he's definitely psychotic and dangerous. And I don't use those words every day. No, he's right about abusing locals and stuff. I do not deal with them, and I wouldn't recommend others do as well. Then the second thing I want to do is I want to ask, what in the world is a 260 change?
I guess Kaizo needs some sleep. Kaizo said 260.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I mean, at least 360 will be completely wrong because he ends up in the same place.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Opposite, but maybe
He's almost
260 is some kind. Maybe he
He's
calculates
almost
the
the same
exact
place.
angle game change.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like. anyways,
180 was the number.
180 is the right answer, Dr. Kaiser.
What's 180 times 2? Never mind.
It's 360.
Now, Mr. Kaizo, okay, women will never give up their power. You can comment on this, okay? Government protection, infinite bag of D's, blah, blah, blah. There is the idea that some women will complain, right? That, and I think Game Changer did a good job of kind of like categorizing the different ones. Oh, yes, but we're not putting any kind of quant to it in terms of like knowing the percentages. We did not go out there and do studies or whatever. But even the ones that might complain and wish, I'm contending that that's just a Tuesday. Now, they drink wine and complain about things anyways. Like, a woman is always going to complain about something, right? So it doesn't mean anything. If you give them a chance, they're still going to do the same damn thing they did before, because that's the programming that the set of incentives set for them. And even if you're being logical and pragmatic, like MOT said, he wouldn't even give up the power. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, women don't want to give up power, and they shouldn't give up power, right? Because I'll give you an example. So my woman is a Muslim. She just actually left the house. Right now, she's come over. She's cleaned the house. I mean, when I say clean, I mean like deep cleaning stuff. And she knows her power too is for me to provide whatever it is that thing would be if we get married, right? It's like in this case, if it's Islam, is man does everything in terms of finance, and then woman does everything in terms of obedience, at least absolute obedience in the end after you already discussed things. So she's not going to let that go because that's the deen. The deen gives her that power, right? To get the, let's say, bride price, the nikah, whatever it is, this case meher is what, you have to give a Muslim woman. And again, she has to kind of decide how much that sets. She's not going to give up that power, regardless of the, let's say, modernism, right? I live in Nairobi. It's a very expensive city compared to other African states. But Muslim women, especially the ones who are like educated, classy, they're not going to give up the idea of, I'm going to pay 20% towards nothing. So if that's the case, even in over here, why would Keisha give up the power that the government's granted her? So I think ultimately you just have to rise above the power or leverage it somehow to suit your benefits.
Well, can I chime in?
Go ahead.
People have to understand, and I think both men and women have to understand. Men have a greater understanding of it because power is rarely ever given to us. However, when you think about how it works, power is a means; it's not an end. So, if a person is to seek power, you have to ask them, to what end do you wish to have this power? Now, a lot of smarter women, and unfortunately, we have a small concentration of those in the Black community, but a lot of smarter women will say to themselves, something, what is the purpose of the power that I've been given? Now, most men who are given power would say, to sustain it, to have generational wealth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If the purpose of power is to, smoke weed and twerk by the gas station, then yeah, you really needed power to do that. It's kind of dim. And I think smarter women is like, something, do I really need this power? Perhaps I should omit it because it doesn't really service the need for which I seek power.
Mm-hmm. And okay, just to comment on that, yeah, and the need will be perhaps what you talked about, base nature, and for somebody to know that whether they're male or female would need to be fairly intelligent, as you already did mention, and then you can talk about the statistics in terms of the concentration of that and whatnot. Makes sense.
Well, yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, because like women are born with the power. At least attractive women have more of it, but women are born with the power to create and sustain a healthy and happy household. That is the only power naturally that a woman should be seeking. These other forms of powers, like power to what end? What is the power in eating rice and beans off of food stamps? It's not really power. It's independence. It's not really power. But they see it different, and that's why.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're.
Can I ask you a question, chess piece? Isn't this power though like leveraging passport bros? An example is this, right? So the women are complaining now. They're trying to shame some of these men, and they're trying to put all the men into the whole passport hose section. And I think that's the consequence of the power that men are now using by leveraging the idea. It's like, okay, well, Keisha, if you're not going to comply to XYZ, there is an alternative, and that's why they are complaining. And I think the fact that they're complaining is actually a good indicator of the power actually so-called working in certain instances.
Well, what you're talking about is a response to the power that was given. Basically, the power that we were talking about before, the power that the government has given them and society through technology has given them. They leverage that power to where instead they say, okay, a person has to be in her early 20s, slim and submissive in order to attract a mate. With so many women out of the market, they could say, oh no, a woman can be 40 fat, big and wig and still attract one because men are forced to wait and deal under those terms. That is how they leverage the power that was given to them. That was the ends of the power that was given to them by the government and the state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, what you see men doing now is responding to that power. They're either saying, so they don't feel powerless in the mating market. They're either saying, listen, I'm going to find a place where that particular power is not leveraged against me, or I'm simply going to, abstain from dealing with such type of women.
So, Dr. Thunder, women giving up their power, the Hail Mary of the whole, because one is, okay, what are your thoughts about that? And then,
well,
let me. What are your thoughts about that? And I also want to ask you this about the if somebody ends up, right, I think especially if it's a man, I think we kind of know the answer to this. Basically, if a man ends up being entangled with some dysfunctional, quote unquote, quote liberal woman, not liberal, I mean in the pejorative sense here, right? Not that being liberal is necessarily bad, but if we're just talking about that pejorative term there, dysfunctional liberal women, that they deserve it. Like the information is 100% known already. Even if you don't know it, you can feel it, you can see it, you at least heard of stats, you can look at your aunt and your uncle or whatever it is. So if you get ensnared into that situation, it is 100% your fault. So women giving up their power, and does any man at this point have any excuse?
You know, I have said this on another matter. So that matter is so in the academy, and this is an old number. It's probably bigger than this number. 20,000 fewer black men in the academy than black females. I'm talking about professors. It's probably closer to 30,000 now. Okay, and the thing is that the only way that dynamic would change is that the powers that be, the sort of those that have achieved a certain amount of success and power, would give up their priority status to prioritize black men. So, in other words, the black women that have been hired would have to say, you know what, this is not fair. This shouldn't be this way. We need to see more parity. The academy is adding to the lack of parity in the black community. It's exacerbating all of the relationship dynamics, all of the broken home dynamics. You know, all of the, you know, it's creating passport bros. It's doing all this stuff, whatever. But they're not going to do that because that would mean that they'd have to give up power. They'd have to give up a certain amount of control, and only an idiot would do that.
Only an idiot would not do that.
Well, yeah. Say it again, Game Changer.
Only an idiot would not do that. And the reason is because, once again, what is the purpose of that power? It's like, okay, you know, for a man, you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women, then you use the money and power to secure the family that the women produce.
But you're talking about that from a moral perspective.
No, I'm talking from an intelligence perspective. Like, you can ask the women who find themselves in this situation, are they happy? Now, they'll lie, but through that lie, we know that they're not. Like, what did being a top whatever get you if you are dying alone buying dogs? What did it get Maya? What did it get Vivica Fox? What did it get Lisa Wright? Smart women ask them. Well, I'm just saying, smart women ask themselves that. It's a smart thing for a woman to say, you know something, I can either support a man and create a healthy family, or I can, see where this sociology degree will take me. A smart woman will make a smart decision.
So we agree that it would be a better decision for society for the woman. Well, perhaps ultimately for the women, but in a temporary sense, with the way that things are, and since we already know that in general they don't seem to have that sort of viewpoint.
Yeah, that's because they're not smart.
Well, I don't know if it's an issue of smart or not. It's more of an issue of indoctrination. I think it's an issue of what they've been taught to value and what they have been taught not to value, right? And also certain narratives about black men that they tend to buy into. So if they're being fed this whole hogwash about how black men ain't ish and X, Y, and Z, why are they going to give up power in order for more of them to partner with ain't ish Negroes?
And
right?
I think this exchange here kind of, and I'll let you finish, Dr. Thunder, and we'll go. This exchange exemplifies for me, and this is just my feeling listening, the point of why you don't even get into this conversation with them. And this is just me speaking. It's like, this is a lot of calories being burnt about something you don't even want to deal with when you have, it's like, hey, there's a bunch of gazelles over here, 2 fields over. And we're over here we're digging in this graveyard where, you can barely find any food or anything like that. You're hoping that you can resurrect some bones. Is it because they're stupid? Is it because they're this and that? And anyways, finish, Dr. Thun.
Yeah. So we agree, Game Changer. And I have I'm a Christian. I have a certain worldview that I'm a fan of traditional religion, and that is the Abrahamic religions, in particular Islam, Christianity, Judaism, the traditional versions of those where there was no smearing with respect to roles, right? And that roles are actually an outgrowth of design. So I have a particular view on this. And so, of course, I agree with you that if people actually understood and accepted their particular role based on design and the X, Y, and Z, then yeah, I think they would make that decision. But I think that there's a lot of contravailing positions, and if you're an academic, it's not likely that you're going to be privy to them. I mean, you'd have to go looking for them because it's a you want to talk about an echo chamber. I mean, there's really not a lot of oxygen that makes it into those meeting rooms. That being said, it reminded me of that because when there was in one of these interviews, it must have been the preliminary discussion where Auston was not involved on this, the Isaiah factor, where it was two women that were being interviewed, and he was being very generous by describing that they had done a lot of research on the Passport Bros, which included them basically just watching a bunch of TikTok videos, which is laughable. And then you find out that one of the women that they selected is an OnlyFans model, a two-time baby mama, and it's a conflict of interest for her to represent as if she is unbiased and she is representing the common black female perspective. No, she's not. Of course, she doesn't want Passport Bros going abroad, because that means they're going to be spending less money on her OnlyFans content. And while she meanwhile is also characterizing these same men as being sex tourists, while she wants them to obviously spend that money
Tour her sexually.
That's right. See, so it's a lot of so I guess my idea is just and actually I don't even remember the question.
No, we're talking about power and should they surrender. I was just
right.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
And so should they, for the interest of the community, if there is actually this love for the community, and if they actually care for their sons, yes. But will they? No.
Well, I want to say this to the ladies that are listening now and in the future. Ladies, if you do not surrender your power to a man and service his needs, then you're stupid. There is no greater goal in life than to do that. Point blank, period. Power is not the exercising of power. Intelligence is, having power is one thing. Knowing when to use it requires intelligence. Eve had the power to destroy Eden, and she didn't have the intelligence not to do it. So, yeah, just because you can do something, that doesn't mean you should. That's understanding power. Don't be stupid, ladies. If you know that there's no greater pleasure in this world than getting me a sandwich, then get it. Come on now.
I was waiting for the sandwich.
Can I respond to that? Can I respond to that? Ladies, be intelligent. Withhold your power for as long as possible. Be as greedy as you want here out on the marketplace. Don't let these people try to tell you to surrender infinite power, because I'm not surrendering mine. You're supposed to go out there and get the best deal that you can with your infinite options and choices. Men have to work for their options. You don't have to work for it. You possibly can. I get mine. I don't want you coming to me and take your options away from you. Don't you try to take my options away from me. And I think that we'll be A-okay. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
So let's look at this MOT. The time before the feminist movement, right? And men did have infinite power. Shout out to Palpatine. They had unlimited power. Now, how many men, did the Hugh Hefner thing outside of Hugh Hefner himself? Most men, even the ones whose value increased over time, and even the ones who cheated, they still sustained healthy families. Healthy families came during societies of men came during times when men had unlimited power. Why? Because the men understood that, yes, I could spend my life, plowing slaves after they get finished plowing the field, or I can, sustain a healthy family and legacy, or I can do both. Nevertheless,
I know you're asking MOT the question, right? And MOT will get a chance to respond because we're going to do this last round right now. However, I'm going to repeat. Dr. Thunder said moral standpoint. I'm going to say you're being normative. You're saying the way things ought to be. You're saying this is the normative way and this such and such. MOT just gave you a black pill stuff, which you're black pill or nihilistic, but also very pragmatic. And you're quite aware of that. And these two things kind of lie in parallel. And you're not going to bring a normative argument to work when a black pillar or so he's like, hey, this is the landscape we're in. It's hellscape, and I don't need to negotiate. I'm not going to talk to you over there. But I'll let MOT kind of, respond on his own here. But because we're already at that hour and a half mark.
Okay,
LAR.
so wait.
What? Just a second.
Real quick. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Well, good. Let LAR just kind of answer the question about LAR. The question is basically, do men that end up in dysfunctional situations with liberal women deserve it, right? Is there still an excuse? Isn't the information 100% there? Even if you're not listening to red pill stuff, can't you see, or your eyes not open? And then your final thoughts, and then MOT, you can go.
I'm gonna keep it short, MOT. My grandfather used to say, "Can't live with him, can't live without him." So guess what? You're gonna have to deal with something. That's the vast majority now. So that's what we have to deal with. We're not gonna be dating guys, so let's just get that out of the way. We just gonna have to deal with the shenanigans, and figure out a way around it. As far as the closing, I'll say this. I think these men have been very classy over the years. These men never said a thing. When you were in Cancun, when you were at Freaknik, when you decided to go both ways, when you was at female strip clubs with the guys, when you decided to go to DR2, when you decided to go to Jamaica, when you was doing the what do you call that? The Tom Joyner cruises, when you Costa Rica, we guys never said nothing. They made movies about it. Y'all came back here with babies that didn't match how you looked, but they was black babies. Nobody said a thing. And you exercised all your options. You've been a toilet in Dubai. Nobody said a thing.
Dubai.
Yes. So here's the issue at the end of the day. If these guys want to go wherever they want to go, just like your fake hair is yours, you paid for it, it's their passport and their trip, they paid for it. So whatever goes on, good or bad, that's them. Nobody said anything to you. You blink twice and make sure your eyelashes don't fall off, because they ain't yours. We don't say nothing. But I'm done now.
All right, MOT, go ahead and you can react to the black pill situation going on here.
Okay, so ladies, listen. You've been having this infinite bag of D's for your whole life. Do you really want to take a chance at giving up all this power and settling for a mediocre guy who's been waiting for you to turn 40 and be done with your infinite bag of D's? Don't be stupid. Hold on to this power forever. Please. Because I'm not interested in a woman who's just now figuring this out at like 40, 45, 50 years old. And I think the type of men who want to settle for someone who would give up that type of power are not quality individuals. Okay? So, what I'm saying is that I'm going to handle my options. I don't want you to give up your infinite power. If people want to sit around and wait this long for basic needs to be met, I want them to be infinitely punished for it. I'm on your side. Keep your power. Don't give it up, because I'm not giving up mine. So, thank you. That's why I just wanted to make sure that was the case. So.
All right, and then just a quick thing about the men. Is there any need for pamphlets to still be sent out to people with regards to the kind of people not to end up with? What do you think about that? MOT.
Say it again, sir. I'm sorry. No, say this.
I'll try to repeat it exactly. Any more needs for pamphlets to be sent out to men regarding the kind of women they shouldn't end up with? And if they end up with the wrong kind of women, is there any excuse that they have?
No, sir. Ladies, go to work. If these dudes want to come in using game and all these predictable methods that they want to do to get to some night box, tear their ass out the frame. You have my blessing to do so.
All right. So, Game Changer, final thoughts, reactions, and whatnot. What you got to say, sir?
Okay, thank you. My message is to the younger women. Your vagina is worth a lot more than your mama's. A lot more, particularly because you came out of your mama's already. So knowing that the bag of D is not infinite. And you want to know how I know? Because my D isn't in your bag if you are old and unattractive, and, it's likely in your daughter's bag, but it's not in yours. It's not an infinite bag of D. Young ladies, make better decisions. Look at the life that you wish to have and then ask yourself, yes, I have this power. Yes, I have this ability. Will the use of this power lead me to the end goal that I want? Is the question that you should really ask yourself. And if the answer to that is no, then why exercise that power? I mean, the car allows you to go 120 miles per hour, but I mean, does that mean that you should? If you did, is there consequences to that? Every time you see a woman who is, let's just say 45 plus, overweight and begging for my penis, it's because her power has diminished. It is. Don't be that woman. Secure yourself. Use your youth and beauty and the best, which is the ultimate power, better than, the one that the government can give, to secure a family.
All right. So, Kaizo, your final thoughts, and also because of this interesting back and forth here, what do you say regarding, hey, go out there to places where people are trained, the kind of people that perhaps will give up their power, or it's still a dicey situation, it's a crazy situation, perhaps, right? And then also on the men's side, the information is out there, yes or no? So on the women's side, well, I guess it's both on the men's side, right? Should men be hoping at all that a woman would change in this particular situation? And if a man ends up being screwed, is it his fault 100%?
Yeah, so I'm the original passport bro. I went to Africa, got myself a beautiful soon-to-be wife, inshallah. And it's worked out great. I'm not dealing with any problems I used to deal with.
You're a fake Muslim, like you were Christian like 3 months ago.
Hey, I found Allah, man. Come on. So, anyways, the point is, I found what I was looking for, and I can't complain. I'm not gonna say it's usually people have like a back drawers and negatives. No, there's no negatives because I went in knowing what it is that requires. You can't be dusty. You got to at least be able to take care of some things. And
okay, so be Christian either. So,
well, that's a whole different conversation for a different day. But yeah, so basically, go somewhere where someone's actually trained to take care of the stuff that you say you want, because you're not going to be able to leverage Keisha. She's not interested in actually taking care of you in any ways. And I wanted to make a comment to Dr. Thunder actually, and also a point to similar point to Game Changer. And it's also a point that I want to support MOT is, I think what you guys are doing in a way is you're trying to reason with Keisha. First, you allowed Keisha into the church, and that's how everything broke down. There's no male leadership in church because you let Keisha become a pastor, which is even against the Bible, right? So at least us Muslims, we've not allowed Halima to be leading us or leading any male prayers. So I think that's one of the reasons why even Muslim men in the West can still somewhat control their family and the wife respect them, because there was never a negotiation with her. Because I do actually see what MOT is coming along. It's like, okay, she's got all the power. Well, so do we. And this whole negotiating with, terrorists isn't going to do anything for anyone. So, and ultimately the last point, yeah, information is out there. If you want to do it, you can. The problem is, well, do you have the finances? Are you willing to do what it takes to move into a new area? Most people don't even leave their towns or cities, right? So obviously those who will, and those who won't, and those who complain I guess they'll be stuck between two chains. Oh, that's terrible. Doesn't make sense, but yeah.
2 Chainz, 2 Chainz. He had some decent music. Shout out to the Bay Area. Shout out to Town Biz. I think he's from isn't that right, Game Changer? But anyways, um, Dr. Thunder. All right, you get to take us out as Mr. Kaiser has brought us back to the beginning, which is the beginning is about economics. It's about getting your economic house in order. Okay. Well, the information is out there, but are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to do the man part of the business as opposed to going to Keisha and trying to get half of what she got? Now, I'm caricaturing things and whatnot, but Dr. Thunder, your closing thoughts on this whole saga. We covered a bunch of ground here. We covered a bunch of ground, including, hey, if you having to explain yourself, you're already in the back foot. How can you move in silence in this kind of a situation? How can you prevent people from quote unquote cloud chasing and having their economics, being dependent upon the kind, the beef back and forth on TikTok with Keisha and stuff like that, all the way through back around to the economic question. The information is out there, but are you willing to get your house in order? Okay. Meaning you completely remove your mind from Keisha and them. Okay. And you do your thing. And then Keisha is a byproduct. What are your closing thoughts, sir?
So yeah, just real quick to respond to Kaizo. I think that your statement is a valid counter to what's going on in Protestant circles for the large part, and in particular, 3 or 4 denominations that are known to be black churches within that Protestant Reformation sort of group collection. So you'd be talking about Missionary Baptist, you'd be talking about AME, you'd be talking about that's African Methodist Episcopal. You'd also be talking about like Church of Christ or Church of God in Christ. Those are basically the denominations where a lot of that stuff that you're talking about really has reigned supreme. When you talk about black church, now I'm Orthodox, and so of course none of that stuff applies. And even Orthodox churches that are not Eastern Orthodox churches, so Orthodox churches like the Ethiopian Orthodox Church or the Coptic Orthodox or the Oriental Orthodox churches, they don't play none of that stuff. So there's not that sort of issue. Now I was talking to Ike earlier today. We were kind of talking through what we were going to do for the show today, and I was doing some grocery shopping, so I was working on my honey-do list. I think a lot of this stuff, men have to stop being afraid of this sort of question, but what about us? And what about us is, what about the women? Because when men do things that are for men, support the interest of men, are prioritizing issues that men face, that's the tactic these days, is for certain groups to come in and try to break it up and try to, cast aspersions, cast it as, being misogynist and all this kind of stuff. These days, it's hard even, men's ministry within churches. That's even in a large degree, I don't want to say it's totally frowned upon, but the kind of information that you're going to be seeing is not going to be the sort of kind of practical kind of stuff that men need to hear. They're not going to be telling you to get your passport in men's ministry. They're not going to say, look, I noticed that you're having the same sorts of issues. You're 45 years old and every woman seems to do the same things. Now, I'd argue that maybe that's an evidence that you have you don't pick well, but it also could be evidence that maybe you should try something different. And it seems to me that would be something that they would be saying. if they really were interested in helping men. But I don't think that they're not necessarily that interested in helping men. I think that the priority is to continue to prop up those that fill most of the pews, right? And that's not against the people that are sitting in the pews. Neither is it actually against the people that are charged with serving the people that are in the pews. It's just what it is. And so your interests as a black man, as a man in general, as a black man in particular, are not going to be the prioritized views. And so they're not even going to know to tell you to get your passport. They're not even going to know that that's a viable option. You know? So, you know, I'm saying this to say, I think it's important to be resolute, stand your ground, be willing to support men, support men's issues, produce content that supports men and their issues, and understand that what's going to come is you're going to have some naysayers come in with the, hey, you know, what about the women kind of talk. And you have to say, look, it's nothing against women. That's just not my lane. And by the way, why would you want me, a man, talking about women's issues? See, nobody even thinks about that. Why would you want a guy talking about women's issues? Shouldn't women just be advocating for themselves? And why is it wrong for men to advocate for themselves?
Nice.
That's all.
Nice. Ending on a positive, on the question note there. That's a negative note, as a matter of fact. But anyways, shout out to the panel. Shout out to Game Changer, LAR Movement, Dr. Thunder, the co-host, and Kaizo, the Kaizoran Empire, the fake Muslim, fake whatever, will be whatever he's got to be in order to trick a traditionally raised women and destroy her.
Oh goodness.
But you know, good luck to him and his fiance and whatnot. But the place to be, 4 p.m. Eastern time every Sunday. The place to be, 4 p.m. Eastern time every Sunday, is right here. Case closed. Check me and Dr. Thunder out also on Getting Ish Done Wednesday. It'll be in this channel, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. With that, ladies and gentlemen,
6:30. Hold up, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes.
I believe I'm still doing that. Okay. Yeah. At this point, I can't. I guess I will never change. But shout out to you guys. Peace to the super chatters again. Peace to the people participating in the chat. Great show. Shout out to the panel members again. And peace. We're out.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil lurking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rise rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.